Trends come and go in Formula One, and for 2021 in Formula One, every team has converged on the same design of front end of the side pod. So why is everyone changing it for this direction, and what do they have to do to make these changes? So what we can do, we can look very conveniently at Racing Point / Aston Martin and see what they've done with their side pods over the past couple of years. So what you can see here is the old Racing Point with the old side pod, and now the Aston Martin with the new side pod. And they've actually flip-flopped between this design over 3 years. So this is what we describe as an old design of side pod. It's what we call low inlet. So what you can see, the inlet that goes into the radiators is quite low down. There's then a big structure above it, and then still some clear air between this top piece of bodywork, which is there for regulatory reasons. Now when we look at everybody else's, and in this case Aston Martin, who have changed for this year, you see that the inlet is much higher, and that structure appears to have moved below, and everything has been shifted upwards towards this top piece of regulatory bodywork. So why are they doing this? Well, it's nothing to do with cooling, it's nothing to do with the size and position of the inlet, it's actually to do with the space underneath. So when you look at this one, you can see the space between the inlet and the bottom of the floor is quite small. It's the area we call the undercut in the side pods. With this car, you can now see that the undercut is huge, much bigger here. And what this is doing is pushing airflow around the side pods over the floor to the diffuser, and this helps you create more downforce. And because it's creating it with the diffuser, you're creating downforce with less drag. It's a very efficient way of getting the cars to work. So how are they making this change, and what's stopping teams just playing around with this during the season or in between seasons? So if we have a look at one of my drawings here, this is a conventional side pod design. So again, you can see a mid-placed inlet, quite a small undercut, and space above the side pod in the space where you potentially could have airflow going over. If we then take the bodywork away, or even more bodywork away, you can see the thing that's making this work is these two structures here. These are side impact spars. And what are these there for? If the car has a T-bone accident or goes sideways into a crash, then these will protect the driver, and they're like effectively a nose cone sticking out the side of the car. Their position is very tightly regulated by the rules. So you can have the bottom one very low down, it has to be in that position within a few millimeters, but the top one's got a small window of opportunity to where you can move it up and down. Then there's bodywork regulations that limit how high up you can have bodywork. So in the old design, you actually had space between the highest position of the side impact spar and the top of the bodywork, which effectively is wasted space from an undercut perspective. If we now have a look at the high inlet side pod, you can see here the two structures are much lower down, the inlet is much higher up, creating a much bigger undercut, as I said, to create airflow going around the side pods. And again, now if we look underneath, you can see this upper side impact spar has been moved downwards, and then the inlet moved above it. So this means you have to make structural changes to the monocoque, which requires token spend, and this is where Aston Martin spent their development tokens this year. Previously, teams were able to just play about with this. In fact, Force India / Racing Point, when they first went to this design, were able to modify an old monocoque and still run it in a second year with a different side pod inlet design. So it's quite adaptable, just restricted somewhat this year by the regulations. For 2022, this whole area is going to change again. So this will be the last year that we see this layout, and it'll be interesting to see what teams are able to do with the new impact structure regulations and the volumes allowed for bodywork.